And in this video, we hear from the first two attending police officers at the crime scene on December the 7th, 1995. This video takes a look at how that crime scene first appeared to those officers and what took place during the first few hours upon the discovery of the bodies of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe.
It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. 3 men, all known criminals, found shot dead in the Essex countryside. It was a cold-blooded, professional killing. The victims had many enemies, but which one wanted them executed?
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Barry Knights, a police constable, and Sergeant Christopher Atkins were those first two police officers who arrived in a police car at 8:17 on the Thursday morning. They were there for around 5 hours. They saw and spoke to the two farmers, Mr. Theobald and Mr. Jiggins, and then walked down the track, which was a single vehicle route and had around 2.5 centimetres or about an inch of snow on it. They saw what was obviously Mr. Jiggins' vehicle that had made 2 tyre tracks down the track. As they rounded the right-hand bend, Mr. Knights immediately saw the Range Rover and later the registration F424 NPE. He asked Jiggins and Theobald to stop when they were 25 yards from the vehicle. The Range Rover was quite dirty, and the only area he could see through was the rear windscreen wash and wipe. The gate was about 5 yards in front of the vehicle. He saw the 2 bodies in the front seats and walked to the offside of the vehicle and saw 3 blue shotgun cartridges lying in the snow beside the driver's door. The driver was sitting in a normal position with his head leaning on his left shoulder. The front passenger had his chin on his chest. There was a third person sitting in the back that you can see from other photographs, sitting slightly slumped, leaning forwards towards the near side passenger window, with his head against the window which was actually smashed. Mr. Knights walked around the rear of the vehicle and stood at the rear near side corner and saw a blue shotgun cartridge on the ground outside the rear passenger door. He could see the large wound clearly visible in the rear passenger's head, which was leaning against a broken window. After a brief conversation with Sergeant Atkins, it was Knights that was left by the scene by the others. Sergeant Atkins went to call for assistance from other police, and he stayed in a small turning off of the track. It was his job to protect the scene and make sure nobody approached until senior officers could assess the situation. He looked for a pattern of anyone walking down the lane, but there were no signs except for the vehicle going down. There were points to indicate people had been up to the scene. Atkins and he were very careful not to disturb anything and not to let things be trodden on. He tried not to tread on the footprints. His own boots were taken for testing, and he would have expected any footwear of anyone who went near the vehicle to be taken to be tested. He was the first person there apart from the farmers. He could not define what footprints there were, but they were in different directions around the vehicle. Okay, so I'm just going to cut in here briefly, as the way that is worded could be quite confusing, but I've read it a few times and I know exactly what he's saying here. So basically, this guy is one of the first responding officers. He's one of the first people at the crime scene, and he's looking for any evidence of anyone walking to and from the Range Rover. He's looking for some evidence, some footprints of the killer entering or exiting this crime scene on foot. Bearing in mind they're obviously found down the bottom of Workhouse Lane, anyone who entered on foot would have to walk all the way back towards the main road, at least in that direction. What he is stating here is that there are no footprints found entering or exiting the crime scene, but there are a number of footprints found around the vehicle. So now, being armed with that information, what exactly could that tell us, or where could that lead us to? Does that give us the possibility that a second vehicle was involved here? Does that explain the lack of footprints entering and exiting the crime scene? yet footprints discovered around the Range Rover. What is important, however, is that you remember exactly what we have spoken about here, because this is going to come up again later on in the series. So just imprint this in your mind. One of the first responding officers who gets there, he's got the best view, he's got the best recollection of the events early on in the discovery of the bodies, and in his opinion, in his own mind, with his own two eyes, he cannot really see any way at all how this killer has got to and from the Range Rover. All he has is some footprints dotted around the Range Rover and a thin blanket of snow across the track. That is all the police have at this point in time. There's no indication of how this crime was committed, of how they got to and from the Range Rover, or even which direction the killer approached from. Let's now continue from where we left off. He could not define who made the footprints. To the rear of the vehicle and on the offside there were 2 marks he saw himself. He did not touch any cartridge case. He only noticed the 3 on the offside and the 1 at the near side. He got bomb tape from his vehicle and put it down to make a track on one side. Nobody wandered down the track. He was in the turning area and he did not see anyone where he was. He said he definitely would not have put his police boots near any cartridge that you see in those photographs. In re-examination, he told you that as the snow was melting, he informed the officers further away what was happening. They were at the A130 end of the track. From his position, nobody could come past without him seeing it. Nobody did, whether a member of the public or a reporter or whatever. There, for the first time, members of the jury, you have an insight as to what was happening in the investigation. It was starting from the far end of the track down at the A130, and it was Mr. Knights who drew attention to the fact that the temperature was up because the snow was melting and things were changing. Sergeant Christopher Atkins had come down the track with Mr. Knights and had seen Mr. Jiggins and Mr. Theobald. When he looked at the Range Rover, he saw no obvious snow on the roof and he saw the bodies. There was about an inch of snow on the track, but no snow in front of the vehicle. The windows were not iced up. He went from the back driver's side to the driver's window and then to the back and down the passenger's side of the vehicle. He walked down the near side and then went back to the track and he put tape across the track. He said in cross-examination it was in the middle of a cold spell and all vehicles out for a length of time would have had ice or snow on them. He had Doc Martin type boots, but not Doc Martens with a block pattern. He said, quote, "Once we were aware of what we had got, meaning the site he had found in the Range Rover, we were very careful where we put our feet. There was quite a covering of snow at that time, about 1 inch. Footmarks can be a valuable assistance. He walked halfway down the near side of the car and did not remember any cartridge case on that near side. He would have recorded it if he had. He was taking great care, bearing in mind what he was looking at. He said there are 1,001 things on his mind when he was looking inside the vehicle. You may also remember Dr. Yankee Passard, who was the police surgeon. He first attended a scene at 9:30 a.m, but he did not see much then because he was kept back from the vehicle. He said it was a cold day and there was snow to about the thickness of 1 centimetre when he first arrived and frost on the ground." Okay, so let's just interject here for one moment. This is interesting. The first police surgeon or the first medically trained personnel arrived at 9:30 a.m. Now, a lot of people talk about the time of death. Why didn't they try and ascertain a time of death? No attempt was even made. And I think quite a lot of people will find it a little bit strange, let's just say that he was kept away from the vehicle. He attends at 9:30, but it clearly says there he did not get to see much then because he was kept back from the vehicle. So he wasn't allowed to make any inquiries himself into the time of death or potential time of death, and he was kept away from the scene. Let's continue from where we left off. He went nowhere near the scene on his first visit, but did so when he returned at 11:30 when he was escorted to the driver's side of the vehicle. He saw empty cartridges on the ground on the offside, which was from the side which he approached the vehicle. He was asked not to contaminate the scene by touching anything. He saw the bodies of the 3 men. He described the injuries he saw, which were afterwards more clearly described by the pathologist, and so I will save the description for then. He saw that the glass from the near side window was shattered. He thought that the gunshot wounds appeared to have caused massive disruptions to the skulls of the 3 victims, and he certified them as dead. Okay, just cutting here again briefly. So it's clear that he was intentionally kept away from the vehicle even when he was allowed at the scene. Now, some people say, well, they couldn't get the bodies out of the vehicle or it would contaminate the scene. But by not removing the bodies at the crime scene, putting them on a low loader, covering it with a tarpaulin, and then removing the bodies in situ back to a police compound is actually contaminating the scene. So that doesn't make any sense at all. They should have had the bodies removed there and then. They should have tried to have ascertained a time of death. But as with a lot of things in this case, a lot of corners were cut. Now, some people will say that's for a specific purpose, maybe a conspiracy reason, who knows. But certainly mistakes were made. I think we can at least agree on that. Let's continue from where we left off. In cross-examination, he said he walked behind Superintendent Dibley to the scene. Mr. Dibley guided him. He actually saw 4 cartridge cases. He thought those were on the offside of the vehicle, but he did not count them and he could not remember how many there were really. He was clear in his mind that he saw 1 cartridge case away from the vehicle. Then it was asked about the time of death. He said there are various methods to ascertain the time of death which you needed to be an expert. It is fraught with difficulty. He did not take the body temperatures or take any active steps because there was a danger of contamination of the bodies by taking temperatures. He did not know what an expert would do to estimate the time of death, and he did not make his own estimate. Okay, so an interesting little point to add in here is that this police surgeon mentions a cartridge being seen away from the vehicle. Now, this is most likely the one that you see in front of you here, and I do actually get quite a lot of questions about this cartridge. It looks like it's been run over, it looks like it's been squashed. What's the deal with this cartridge? Why is a photograph being taken? Well, from memory, I believe that this cartridge was not related to the killers. It just happened to be a pure coincidence, basically, that this cartridge was found nearby. You can see, obviously, it looks like it's being run over at some point in time. But by all accounts, it was not linked to these shootings. Let's continue from where we left off. DC Peter King attended the scene about 20 to 11 and took a number of the photographs we have just been looking at, which were all marked PLK, his initials. At 7:45 in the evening at the Scenes of Crime garage at Southwood and Ferrers Police Station, he took further photographs showing the 3 deceased inside the vehicle. The next day he took a series of post-mortem photographs during the post-mortem of each of the deceased. We now come to the forensic scientist John Burns. He has been a forensic scientist since 1966 and has worked exclusively in that time in the examination of firearms since 1977. He works at a laboratory at Huntingdon and is also a chemist. He did a threefold examination, the scene first, then the garage at Southwood and Ferrers Police Station, and then the post-mortem. He examined the scene with Inspector Hughes and Dr. Lanas, who you remember was the lady pathologist who attended, and I'll remind you of her in a moment. The Range Rover was at the end of the farm track, as Mr. Burns described it. It was fringed by bushes and small trees. Blood had dripped from the vehicle, particularly on the near side, and run downwards in puddles of water towards the farm gate. There were 5 12-bore cartridges on the ground by the vehicle, 1 near the front offside wheel, 2 some 3 feet from the vehicle's midpoint on the offside, and 2 in the region of the near side corner. The 3 deceased were in the positions that he described. The rear near side window of the door had the rear portion fallen out. The vehicle was taken to the police garage for further examination. Removal of the bodies revealed that all 3 had suffered head injuries consistent with being caused by a shotgun. He spoke of blood splattering on the inside of the vehicle and of close-range shotgun damage from within 2 feet. He put it caused to the front offside edge of the driver's headrest. You remember seeing that in a photograph. It was consistent, that damage, with the pellets continuing on their course and causing injury to the driver Rolfe's head or face. There were 2 fired shotgun cases in the vehicle, one on the floor near the rear offside door and the other in the front offside door pocket. If you would like to learn more about the Range Rover murders, then click on the video in front of you now. You will also see the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.